Han is a form of gender expansionism. It's a third category that broadens our view of what a gender can be, but is simply another label that carries its own stereotypes and expectations.
あ、君は女性だよ。何も変わってはいない。ユーリ。から見ると男性ってあんなにバカっぽく見えるのか。あのことが大好きだからよ。これだから性別持ちは頭が固いと言うんだ。ファンになればわかるよ。性別なんて大した問題じゃないって。それはそうかもしれないけど。僕は、あ、いや、私は怪我してカプセルで眠っていたんだよね。ああ。
Congratulations! You, like Yuri in episode 10 of GNOSIA, have awoken to suddenly find yourself as a woman. Maybe you already were one, or maybe this is brand new to you. It might seem scary, but it's perfectly normal, and I've developed this survival guide here to ensure your experience is as smooth as possible. Now, unfortunately, gender is not just one simple body part, behavior, or spiritual essence. I cannot measure your gender with any known tools. Gender is some unholy concoction of social expectations and appearances. Your tiniest mannerisms, subtleties in the pitch of your voice, the way that you refer to yourself and others, that's all gender. Learning all of this from scratch will seem very daunting, but you'll pick it up quick from observing others.
僕って女性なの？やはり記憶が混乱しているんだね。あ、君は女性だよ。
You probably don't feel very different right now. In Yuri's case, they discovered something had changed only because their body had changed. You may have heard that sex is a separate biological aspect of your identity while gender is the social one. But that simply isn't the case. In Bodies That Matter, Judith Butler describes sex as the retroactive gendering of the body, a desire for an irreducible and material foundation for which gender can be laid on top of. Rather than a biologically determinative reality, sex is just one subcategory of gender. It is a gender binary in self-defense mode. In a world where people widely criticize gender norms, sex must be assigned at birth to ensure children do not deviate too far from said norms by assigning them a sex, not a gender. Sex is also not a binary. Any possible definition one can offer for man or woman will always have exceptions. Not all people assigned female at birth are capable of giving birth, for example. But the fact that they have certain genitalia means they are still expected to follow all of the social rules related to those who can. They're still expected to marry a man and become a mother who takes care of the home, even if it's through other means like adoption. Notably, Yuri realizes quick that nothing has changed besides their gender. From episode 9 to episode 10, only two things really changed for Yuri. Their chest and hips change shape, and almost everyone on the ship treats them differently. It really is one of the first things you notice. It's the eyes. Men must experience it too, but I think it's a little different. For men, small infractions can get you a fine, but a felony, well, then you'll end up where the rest of us are, where the negative space of gender presides, the random encounter table. As I became a girl, I realized that the less effort I put into my appearance on any given day, the less people saw me as one. There's a reason that SQ, a woman born just a few years ago as a spare body for someone else, so heavily exaggerates her femininity as she's learning it from scratch. The default state, that unshaven, unclean, unfashionable state, that was man, the clean slate, from which all non-cis men must be deviating from. Quote, "The tendency to take men as the default gender leads to a second bias, the attribution of gender differences to women's nature more than to men's nature. This may occur because of a more general tendency to attribute intergroup differences to those groups who are not considered to be the default for the larger social category. Indeed, not only are gender differences attributed to women more than men, but sexual orientation differences are attributed to lesbians and gay men more than to heterosexuals, and racial differences are attributed to blacks more than to whites." In my previous video, I discussed how the label of human is stripped from all those deemed deviant. To be clear though, This does not mean men are innately evil or incapable of gender struggle. The category of non-human includes men who commit infractions against patriarchy. That's why gay is so often thrown around as an insult against men when their behavior is being policed. Non-human is also not a universal or an innate characteristic. People who are policed as acting out can and will police others for acting out. It's not a strict hierarchy or database. It is a collection of individual actions that condition behaviors deemed beneficial to patriarchy. The biological and social expectations of gender and sex shift wildly by time period and geography and culture. But they can also be understood as estimations, reasonable guesses that attempt to simplify a wildly complex experience. When I speak of gender abolition, I don't mean to invalidate that experience. Those guesses are used by individuals to find stability and comfort, but they're also used to distribute the label to those deemed worthy of agency. I can't say with certainty that all of sex and gender down to its tiniest minutiae are completely arbitrary, even if I really want to, but I can say that the elevation and policing of gender certainly are. Especially because, when you are labeled as sufficiently non-human, you're just a random encounter in an RPG. You might be recruited, bribed, or beaten up. Whether it's positive or negative, your agency is secondary to the players. Have you ever heard the phrase, in the game of patriarchy, women are not the opposing team, they are the ball? What it means is that men compete with other men for status using non-men as the tool. That competition is both internalized and done in private, and externalized and done in public. It's a haphazard mix of performative coolness and kindness, and performative cruelty and violence. Survival in these scenarios can be extremely challenging and they're frequent, but I'll walk you through examples that Yuri and other crew members experience. Let's start with Shikamichi's behavior. In a previous episode, Shikamichi pursues Stella romantically. While he does eventually forfeit this pursuit and asks to become platonic friends instead, in the process he underlines some key features of cool or kind performativity. Despite his desire being a connection with Stella herself, he focuses much of his pursuit on Jonas, who he perceives to be a romantic rival. While Stella does act in service of Jonas as the AI of the ship he captains, Shikamichi is the one who conflates said service with romance in the first place. Shikamichi and Jonas literally play a board game with Stella as the prize, an obviously absurd interaction. Why would Shikamichi winning this game imply Stella would like him? We're not rams. Women are not inherently impressed by winning a battle with another man. Shikamichi is not an evil man. You don't have to be evil to participate in the game of patriarchy. But he is objectifying Stella, and until he asks her directly for friendship, ignoring her agency. Xiaoming's behavior presents an interesting dichotomy of performative cruelty. Xiaoming self-isolates and does his best to hide his emotions. He wants to blend into the background or just not be seen at all. He frequently presents himself as unintelligent or unmasculine intentionally in order to protect himself, such as when he grovels to survive being voted for cold sleep. But he also presents himself as a bully, misgendering and sexually harassing Setsu as well as the player if they are not a man. In his GNOSIA ending, Xiaoming regrets his overwhelming urge to kill the player, knowing he'll be left alone again. This scene reads with sexually violent undertones, but it stands out compared to his behavior in the event Citizen Slime, where he's also a GNOSIA. He avoids touching the player at all, even while cramped into a small medical pod. While his groveling is intentionally unmasculine, his cruelty towards Setsu and the player exists in a strange double reality. Being cruel to the non-binary Setsu and the non-binary or female player, Xiaoming is reinforcing a gendered hierarchy where he is the powerful one. For a man that hides his intense emotions, such as his desire to free Otome from her suffering as a lab animal, that reminds him of his childhood being raised alongside monkeys, this bullying can be seen as a way to reclaim a bit of masculinity that he lost through those emotions. But men bullying non-men is not innately masculine. In a paper on the gendered nature of bullying discourse in schools, Ringrose and Reynolds write, quote, "When the girls challenged Stu's masculinity through hair ruffling, his friends positioned both the challenge and Stu's retaliation, thumping the girls in the breast area, as marking him out as ambiguously masculine in ways that resonate strongly with the example from Ringrose's data above. Here, Stu's violence against a girl becomes a signifier of a classed, pathological version of wife-beating masculinity. Thus, to be explicitly positioned as a bully either by the school or by other children was neither desirable nor powerful for boys. In fact, the very opposite. Once labeled as a bully, could function in contradictory ways, as a marker of weakness, pathology, sexual deviation, and class-based irrationality, and was particularly evident in the positioning of Stu as a low-class wife-beater above. In some ways, Xiaming simultaneously continues his demasculization through bullying, while internally claiming some of his masculinity back through the same act. Now, how do we survive either of these situations then? What if Shikamichi and Xiaming didn't have softer hearts on the inside and really were prepared for physical violence? Well, Setsu presents one solution in some loops. Just fucking kill him, I guess. Okay, hold on. You can't do that, unless you, really have to. But I point out Setsu's retaliation because I have terrible news. In a one-on-one situation, there's no optimal strategy that can guarantee your safety. Whether you lie to try and defuse it, or be honest and stand your ground, whether you give an inch to avoid the mile, or refuse even that, I've tried it all. Many people have tried it all. In the past and today. Whether you run or fight, whether you swing first or swing second, some people just won't take no for an answer. Remnen, a man riddled with trauma and anxiety, escaped from his time being kept by a woman as a pet, where he was also assaulted and forced to father SQ. He could not talk his way out of that. He had to run or fight, and he ran. But when he ran, she chased him to the ends of the universe, either inside of SQ or inside of Kukrushka. But that doesn't mean it's hopeless. It just means you can't do it alone. Your safety, internally from yourself and externally from people who would do you harm, is contingent on going outside and meeting people. Organizing is a scary word. Reminds me of people much smarter than me, much braver than me, and much more selfless than me. Reminds me of the heroes of history. But organizing doesn't just mean boycotts and unions and mass movements. It also means making networks of friends who are materially there for each other. Mutual aid is a holistic philosophy, one that is critical to your safety as any oppressed minority. Emphasis on the mutual part. The point is to reject a commodified or capitalist vision of help and to believe in helping your community according to their needs, just as you'd want them to do for you. You cannot really rely on the state. It is just as, if not more, complicit in the violence you receive throughout your life. I'm not saying there's nothing that can benefit you, of course. Many people in my life could have starved if not for food stamps. But the idea that the state will protect you from patriarchal violence is laughable. Who can protect you is your community. They're the ones who walk with you at night, who watch your glass when you need to pee, who ensure people who do you harm are not welcome in your space. They're the ones who ensure you're not left alone during a mental health crisis or when you're dealing with manipulation. And I want you to throw out a fear you might have, that it's not real organization if you're not rioting in the street, that it's not real charity if you're not volunteering every night at a soup kitchen. You and I, come on, let's be honest, probably aren't heroes. I barely have the strength enough just to survive. But if you willingly put whatever strength you have left to being informed, to creating kind and gentle communities, to making sure your friends have a roof over their head and food, the best way to fight social hierarchy is to erase it from your personal life as much as you can. You can't always stop your boss from being above you, but you can build a world, a smaller world, where you and your partners and your friends and your loved ones and your family are all on equal footing. And maybe in this smaller world you've created, where you're safe and you're cared for, maybe in this world you can start to feel like Yuri did. If your body randomly changed one morning, you'd still be you, wouldn't you? In this smaller world, your gender isn't forced to exist. You're allowed to have fun and make up the rules as you go. You need to make a space where you live, not survive.